Great. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everyone doing out there?
Doing great.
Doing great. I see two Ricks, Rick Greenfield, Rick Arlo, Barry Lake, Brad Hightower. We may have some additional guests later on today. Welcome to today's very special Save Our Sites webinar series dedicated to the sponsors who are making Save Our Sites possible for all of our front lines out there. So today we are going to be focusing specifically on one of the powerhouses in our industry, RealTime CTMS solutions. I have never been so starstruck in my life. We said this on the tech check, but I have to say it again. I feel like I'm looking at famous baseball cards right now. That's about where I am. So without further ado, Barry, Rick, would you be willing to introduce yourselves to the audience?
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Daniel, thank you so much for you and Brad doing the Save Our Sites conference. I'm Barry Lake, and I'm the president and founder of Devana Solutions, and we do steady startup automation and analytics for the clinical trial sites. And I'll pass it to Rick Greenfield.
Awesome. Thank you as well, Dr. Fox and Brad, for having us. We're proud sponsors of the SOS conference, and looking forward to being there. I'm the founder and chief strategy officer for RealTime. And as you know, we provide technology for clinical research sites and site networks around the world. And I've been doing that since 2013 and have a lot of neat things coming up in the marketplace here in the near future, and look forward to showcasing that at the SOS conference here in the next couple of weeks. So we'll see you there.
Great. And I'm Rick Arlo. I'm founder and president here of Compliant. We provide the pioneers and provide a leading e-regulatory solution, helping to automate the regulatory and documentation challenges of sites. Really excited to be here.
I can't tell you how excited I am to have each of you here. So we have RealTime Software Solutions, kind of like one of the OG CTMS platforms in the industry. RealTime, I have many sites in the network who use RealTime. Nope, I saw a hand. They absolutely love RealTime, and there's a reason for that. So RealTime has done an amazing job building technologies that brings out the best in our sites. And then when I found out that RealTime started working with Compliant, I thought, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And then I found out that RealTime started working with Devana, and they created this suite. I felt like I was literally looking at like the Oracle solution, like this giant enterprise of software solutions dedicated to literally becoming the best in the industry. So I have to tell you, super duper powerhouse for each. I know that you kind of mentioned it in each of your introductions, but let's do a real deep drill into your organizations. Besides having an awesome goddess archer, Barry, at conferences, can you tell me about Devana's superpowers?
Yeah, thanks. Do you prefer Dr. Fox or Daniel? I mean, I think of you as Daniel, but you are Dr.
I've been
Fox.
called far worse. So
yeah, you are Dr. Fox.
We just call him Foxy.
Yeah, Foxy.
There you go.
Foxy, I don't know about that, but Fox is fine.
Well, we'll go with Dr. Fox. But so listen, yeah, we just there was good CTMSs on the market when I was running my site, but we were getting the demand from sponsors and CROs to say, hey, we're looking at how efficiently you can mobilize at your site through study startup. And still to this day, for most sites, as you and Brad know, is it's spreadsheets and maybe a basic CRM, and it's really difficult to capture the metrics of how you have efficient turnaround times in study startup. So, i.e., how quickly can you receive and submit a feasibility? How quickly can you turn around a contract and a budget? How quickly can you turn around your regulatory? How quickly can you, from the time your site is activated, can you start screening and enrolling patients? And so we just felt like there's got to be a way to automate that. And if the sponsors and CROs were capturing those metrics, we need to have a solution that is site centric, where the sites can capture those metrics for two reasons. Number one, process improvement, right? Got to want to get better so that we can get these therapies to patients faster, cut the cycle time of the trial down. Number two, performance. If you outperform in an indication, then you want to tout that to the sponsors and CROs that have a pipeline of clinical trials in that indication. And so that's what we were about. And I would commend, as I always do, people have heard me say it ad nauseum, but so we didn't want to be CTMS. We wanted to complement CTMS and kind of integrate and wrap around it for some analytics on performance and process. And Rick Greenfield, to his credit, was the first of the CEOs of one of the major, as you said, Dr. Fox, OG CTMSs that came to me at Rick, I think it was at SCRS one year, and you said, just let's do this thing, And so we integrated, and then when it became the need for Devana Solutions this past June to get capital to scale even more, it was natural for me to turn to Rick and Rick's team. So maybe that's a good segue into Rick, Daniel.
Well, before we do that, Barry, and again, I met Barry through his interview with Brad Hightower a while back. So if you ever want to know about Barry's backstory and where he came from and how he did what he did, not only is it impressive, but it really shows a lot to the story and what he's doing with Devana. So Barry, the one thing I loved about what you said was we really, as sites, we need informed business development. We need those metrics, those bragging rights, so we can go to sponsors and CROs and say in confidence, we are literally one of the best sites around. It can drive for better negotiations because you have metrics that show your value, and it's critical. It's also a critical component that we've been looking for in our CTMS platforms and our business development strategies on the front lines for a very long time. So I'm glad that you picked up that torch and ran with it. And I think that you're going to see a substantial impact for our sites and our front lines.
Yeah, and I would add just two quick things to that. It's not just what are you good at, it's process improvement platform at Devana Propel, because you also want to know what you're not good at, and you want the leadership to be looking at saying, wait a minute, why are we taking 10 days to turn around a basic feasibility? Or why are we taking, and of course we have that time where it's sponsor and CRO delayed. So thankfully we capture that too. Okay, but you want to be able to press down on where you can improve your performance. And then secondly, besides, we always say to people, capture every opportunity. Even if you don't do oncology at your sites, or even if you don't do pediatrics, you get an idea as to where the therapies are trending, right? Mm-hmm. And so maybe that means you go out and get an investigator to complement your business because they have that capacity.
So now you're looking at forecasting and trajectory and even your potential, like understanding your resources as a site based off of your community, your relationships with your physicians. I mean, metrics will drive a successful site. Yeah. So I'd like to move down to Rick Arlo for Complian. Can you tell me what superpower Complian contributes to this equation?
Yeah, great question. I think we've spent more time than anyone out there just focusing on the one challenge of ensuring that your regulatory documents and all of that documentation is going to be done quickly, compliantly, accurately, just like anything that can be very detail oriented. You need to have the right tools and support and service in place, and think through all the details to ensure that every time, you're doing things accurately and compliantly, right? So, at the end of the day, I think that's really our unique superpower and what, I brought into the space. I started the company here over, a decade ago, working with a leading health system and medical center, and, seeing that problem, firsthand. And, we stayed true, solely focusing on, all of those details, so that, the site customers we work with don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Don't have to worry about falling into those issues, and um, have both the technology and support and experiences they need to be successful. So yeah, I think that's really the superpower here, if that answers the question.
Absolutely. The success is in the detail. And Rick, we're going to leave you as the capstone. I didn't forget you, but I want to come back to you here in a minute. Brad, you had your hand raised. You're a proud real-time user. So tell me, are you feeling the effects of these superpowers that we have here on the webinar?
Yeah. I mean, no question. I mean, in terms of anything you need to do as a site is there throughout. And you see this even just, with the three guys here, not including all the other crazy functionality that I'm sure Rick Greenfield could talk about as it goes in. So, I mean, we really could not run our business without real time. There are other CTMS systems out there, no question. I will say what set it apart, in a lot of ways for me has been their customer service. Again, we have a, sort of an account manager. We have a monthly call. We're getting constantly updated about, how well we're using the system. I think maybe Barry kind of hinted at this, but sites, I feel like there's tools out there, but they're only as good as how well you use them. Right. So I know for us, it helps a lot because I have a tendency to do the bare minimum sometimes. But I've got somebody working with me to remind me hey, that's great, but you're not getting the full, functionality or the full value out of it unless you're really using it to the highest degree possible. So it's huge. It's been, obviously a big game changer. We're now getting pretty deep into eSource and really, committing to doing that through real time. And it's been the easiest and simplest, cleanest for us to use. We have used others and tried different things out. So, I mean, I can go on and on, but I mean, really, again, it's really end to end and, or not, if you don't want all that stuff as a site, you don't have to do it, but it's there. So again, I love that. I don't have to go looking necessarily for 15 systems to string together because it's all there, man.
And that's exactly why we're there. Now, Rick, let's point to you. Let's look at real time itself. Can you tell me what superpower does real time bring to this triad?
Well, it's great to hear, Brad, that you guys are starting to leverage into eSource. And I can tell you that, most of our customers do not use 100% of the system. I mean, even just the recruitment modules, most of our customers use maybe 40% of the full power of real time and really leverage its full capabilities. And it's always exciting when you see someone who really is leveraging, near 100% of what it can do. But look, I mean, if you want to really save our sites, in my opinion, you have to understand the needs of the sites. And, people who know me know that I started in this industry back in 2001, building a site and built one of the largest multi-specialty clinical research sites. And that's where RealTime was born, and RealTime was the backbone of that site and still is today. And, we wanted to build something that was truly meant to shore up and help a clinical research site be successful in all of the areas, whether it be patient recruitment or managing finances, or managing documents. Of course, we wanted to touch on, and one of the reasons why we wanted to partner with Barry and Devano was, the startup activities and the data analytics, getting into eSource and actually managing data. But there are still so many more pain points that we need to solve in our industry. And, it's frustrating that we can't get CROs and sponsors to partner with us more. And I think that's, really one of the reasons why the SOS conference, I hope, will be another opportunity for our voices to be heard, and for us to have an opportunity to collaborate, to say, how can we come together and solve these pain points together. And I think the pendulum is swinging, and we are seeing things get better. And that's really what real time is all about. I think that's really what separates real time and Devana and Complion apart from the rest, is we are still to this day focused on sites. We're not trying to create sponsor solutions. You go to our website, it's not about sponsor solutions. It's about site solutions, and how can we continue to solve for sites, and how can we continue to make sites better.
And Rick, I'd like to focus on one of those things you said. You said there are many, many pain points right now that we have in this industry. So there's probably more pain points than we have professional years to solve. So for each of you, what do you see as like your primary objective, like your targeted pain point that you really want to look at right now? Let's say 2024, maybe your next 1 to 3 years.
Well, I'll start since I've got the mic at the moment. I mean, the biggest one that I know everybody is hurting the most on is moving data. And, of course, Brad, you're collecting data electronically now. It's a beautiful thing. It creates a ton of efficiency, and it's worth it to get off of paper, but you're still transcribing data, and that doesn't make any sense, right? We're now digitizing data, but you're still having to transfer digital data from one screen to another. And how can we solve for that? And so, that's a top priority for real time, to figure out a way to make data move from our system into EDC systems. And so I think we need to get sponsors and CROs to help us find a way to make data move between systems much, much more freely.
Yeah, and I think you're right. We are going to need some help from the other side of the aisle over here if we want to try to have our systems exchange information like that. And now we could almost go into a level of automation. Like how automated do you think we could get to a point in data exchange?
Well, I mean, we could get very, very automated. So I'm a part of DTRA. We actually did a demonstration on stage in November, where we actually demonstrated proof of concept, where we did an e-consent in real time, and we showed that e-consent flow directly into a proof of concept system, a hello world system, where that e-consent flowed directly into a quasi sponsor system using technology that we developed. And so it absolutely can be done. But like you said, we would need for there to be buy-in from the other side of the aisle, and for people to adopt this technology, and for everyone to agree on sort of a ubiquitous way that we would work together. So we're not there yet. These are the kinds of conversations that we need to have at conferences like yours, where we would all say, we're going to work together to find a common way that we're going to communicate between our systems, and not compete, but rather work together.
So I don't know if this steals anyone's thunder, but we actually have a comment from the audience here. Rachel Jones says that she would love to see this partnership tackle drug diary and ePro reporting improvements.
Well, so
go ahead, Rick.
Great point. So like with our Engage solution, so we have our patient portal that does allow for e-consent, ePro, virtual visits. So this is real-time supporting DCTs. So in other words, like with Brad and his ability to utilize not just eSource, but now collect data from patients utilizing these tools, we've got the data. And so, that's kind of what you can tell your sponsors and your CROs and your EDC vendors. We've got your data. We would love to find a way to deliver it to you. So it's a matter of really, again, working with the other side of the aisle to see if we can get that data transferred over.
So I'm going to move over to Barry real quick. Barry, what's the targeted pain point that you're thinking about right now to help save our sites?
I think, and it speaks to a little bit about what Rick Greenfield was just saying, in just terms of it's more visibility from a process and performance metrics. Obviously, is going to be our contribution to the real-time family. From the site side of things, there's such I think lack of feedback in terms of like when you're performing either Brad's site or your site, any site on a trial, you have no way of knowing benchmarking wise how are we doing, right? Like if we're one of 200 or 2,000 sites on a trial, you know, so you get the newsletters occasionally, right? And the newsletters will say, well, here are the top enrollers, you know. Well, okay, if my name's up in lights, that's good, but I want to know where is my site from 1 to 200 in terms of performance, you know, whether that's turnaround time performance or whether that's screening and enrollment performance. And because that feedback loop is so bad, I think between, you know, one of us hasn't taken a study which was a tough, let's say it was a tough derm study, and you took it because you had a gap in your schedule, and then your contract for enrollment was 6 patients, and you got 3, and you're like, oh my God, I'm only 50% contract met percentage. But guess what? That protocol might have been so difficult that you were amongst the top enrollers, and you don't know because you're not getting the feedback. So what we want to do in the collective real-time Devana Complion family is like enable where, you know how you rank, or you know how your pipeline is trending, and all de-identified, but you could come in and see, oh, here's where my site is strong, and oh, I can see there's other sites that have a different sway to their pipeline. Maybe that gives you a hint as to where you can go recruit more investigators or stand up another site, if that makes sense. So just a couple of use cases.
Oh, that is so cool. So Brad, you could easily do KPIs or metrics or things like that, where you could say, you know, we average this many days for a startup, this many days for a contract turnaround. But then if Barry can do this in the real-time universe, you're going to be like, yeah, and by the way, we're within this percentile of the sites that are being assessed, which that's kind of bragging rights if you think about it.
No, I mean, it's beautiful. I know I do a lot of the, front end BD for us. So I know how much of a pain in the ass it is chasing all the different threads, keeping up with who's where, what I need from whom. It sucks. It's not easy to do. And so, sites want to be good businesses. This is something I think we really lack for a lot of smaller independent sites. And I've oftentimes been guilty of this because we don't have the tools to be good businesses, right? This is where Devana is solving that problem. I'm curious, Barry, from your perspective, because I've complained about this for a long time. Like, newsletters are great, but even so many studies don't even use newsletters. And like you said, maybe they're showing the top 3 enrollers, and you're like, hey, cool. There's 150 sites. Like, do we suck? Are we great? Are we average? Is this an us problem? In which case, maybe like we can fix it very simply. Or is it a study problem that's incredibly opaque as it stands? What do you think is sort of stonewalling that level of transparency? I mean, do you think, do sites not want to know? Do sponsors not want to share it? Is it a technology problem, or has nobody thought to do it?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like, if I look at it at a macro level, it's a great question, Brad. Clinicaltrials.gov and NIH is basically, they've mandated amongst the industry sponsored trials that they've got to publish the results, once it's finished. And you know what the compliance is right now? It's like 40%. And the FDA is like, this is not what you should be doing. But yet there's no, other than a slap on the wrist, like there's no, so I'm not criticizing the sponsors. I think it's that you got a highly competitive drug development industry, and, to be transparent about the results of your clinical trial is maybe something that they're a little bit remiss to do. But if there's going to be a true partnering amongst, because that's how we have to think, right? Like, we're the partner at the sites that is on the front line of this trial. And if we're going to be a true partner, you want to know how you're doing, right, Brad? You want to know if it's, to your point, if it's an us problem, is it a you problem? Is it a mutual problem we can solve? And I think there's a bit. I think it's been great lately, and I'd love to hear what the rest of you guys think. That sites are, I think, starting to be seen as true partner stakeholders in this. But,
And I mean, Rachel, thank you so much for interacting here. We got another comment from Rachel that's perfect for this. She said, "We have asked these things directly of sponsors and have received a lot of gatekeeping around the results." Rachel, I echo exactly what you said. Oftentimes this is proprietary information. We can't share this with you. It's against our SOPs. So a lot of times I think it is sites, like you said, Barry, sites are starting to want to know, but the gatekeepers, the people who hold this information historically, they're not willing to be transparent about it.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because imagine hiring an employee and giving them a job to do, and then making them guess as to whether or not they're doing a good job of it. Never giving them a performance review, never checking in with them to give them feedback. Do you think that employee would stick around like for very long? They probably wouldn't. They'd probably find a place where, they're going to be valued and get some feedback on the job that they're doing. So it just seems like such a poorly thought out and short-sighted way, like to do business. And not that should be a surprise. I know Barry said you don't want to rip on sponsors. It's okay. We can rip on them a little bit. I think, it's not any one sponsor. I know this is like a more industry-wide problem, but I mean, when you stand back and look at it, it's pretty insane.
Yeah, and we want to approach it from the site's perspective, as RealTime's always tried to be a leader in doing, which is, listen, if maybe they'll come along at the sponsor and CRO level and be a part of the feedback loop, but until that time, maybe we can get together and say, okay, we'll pull the data from clinicaltrials.gov, even though it's only 40% of the trials, and then we'll talk to sites, and if we can get together and you can see how you rank kind of on a de-identified basis to be able to say, okay, I'm doing great, or hey, I need to pick it up a little bit here. Let's go at it from a site's perspective, and maybe we'll bring the rest of the industry along.
So, or even bring along some continuous improvement along with there. This is where we need to work on. This is how we need to get better.
This is maybe I don't want to get too in the weeds, but if there are 50 real-time sites working on the same study that are using Devana, could that information be blinded in some way like aggregated and shared?
Mm-hmm.
That's the way we I think, and Rick Greenfield and Rick Arlo could probably endorse this as well. We want to go at it from the standpoint of okay, yes, we're competitive, but if you think about the site industry, we're a lot more collegial than anything. And if it was on a de-identified basis where you could go in on that difficult psoriasis study and say, okay, Brad pops in and goes, oh, I'm number 6 out of 600 sites, good news. And if your other, real-time centric sites are involved, and again, I think it's just helpful for everybody to then drive process improvement or tout what you do well. So
this is where my passion comes. And Barry, I think you're one. Maybe it's in your plans, but you're also to the point where you can have a site controlled fair market value. And that's like my favorite one. Is the one thing you always get from sponsors or CROs when you negotiate is, oh, well, you are the highest paid site across this study. And I would love to be like, well, actually, according to RealTime, and these are all the sites in this study, I'm right about median. We have our own metrics here, and your benchmarking is wrong. I'm sorry you paid $60,000 to access it for the year, but you're wrong. I would love to be able to have that at my disposal for business development and negotiations, be like the power of metrics when people are trying to pull a veil over a site's eyes. I think that's just a really, really cool idea.
Yeah, in our system, there was the sorry.
I was just wanted to interrupt and ask. Sorry about that.
Yeah, please, Chris.
Dr. Fox, question. So what it sounds like you're saying, Dr. Fox, is sponsors will lie to you.
Really, Chris? That's the thing.
Just kidding.
Is we don't know. I mean, I suspect they're lying. Well, I know they're lying to me, but it's only because I talk to other sites that are getting the same exact spiel. So, I'll have a negotiation And the CRO says, well, you're the highest paid site in this entire study. And then I know another site in the study and we compare notes and they get more than I do. They're putting us against each other. So it'd be so cool to have that as a data metric so that sites can come together and say, you're lying to us.
And I completely agree with what you're saying, Dr. Fox. You know I'm kidding. I negotiate a lot of budgets as well.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt we're being lied to. No.
Yeah. So Barry can help us not get lied to, which I think is probably one of the best ways to save our sites, is to make sure that they get paid fairly and they're, you keep the CROs and the sponsors honest with the data that the sites control, not that the sponsors and the CROs control. And I think that that's a really, really big passion of mine.
Yeah, I think the positive that's built into our Devana real-time system is the capturing, just for example, of the study budget that you're offered to start with, and then where you negotiate it to, and then when, let's say, the same sponsor comes to you, or the same CRO, usually it's a CRO, and they come to you and they offer you, 20% less for a visit on a study that has a very similar protocol, and you're like, wait a minute, we just did this study, and this study, and our data is here that says you paid this for it. Why would I take 20% less? I mean, using a simple example, but again, using it in a positive way to negotiate the best possible terms that you can, because we have a business to run. Even though our mission is to get, altruistic, get drugs to patients faster, we have a business to run and we have to make money to do it.
And to be fair to sponsors, they have a business to run as well.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
it's in their best interest to keep their costs as low as possible. And additionally, sorry, Dr. Fox, additionally, when one sponsor is paying 20% more, they may have it within their budget to do so, whereas the smaller sponsor does not. That's always a possibility as well, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
So just to be fair to sponsors, arguing from their side too.
Sponsors, we love you, and your best opportunity is probably just to make sure sites have what they need to get the job done quickly, efficiently, and with high quality. And so on that, I think that's a really good segue. Rick, Arlo, you're down there being quiet, man, but it's your turn, my friend. If there's a pain point, what's your most passionate pain point that you want Complion to focus on? Like, what are you trying to solve for the sites?
Yeah, I think the same exact point, but a little bit differently here is that, sites can really, just like we're talking about taking control and ownership of what we were talking about here before in terms of their contracts and what they should be getting paid, should be doing the same exact thing for their other responsibilities in terms of, how they have to manage, their regulatory responsibilities and documentation. They've got to be able to take control and ownership of that process, and really end up being able to come to the table with more effective ways that they can manage across all of their studies. So it's the only way you can do things well, right? If you are doing it the same way, on every different study you're working with, especially as sites are growing to do more and more studies, as well as add more and more locations, right? That's the only way you can scale and do things effectively and efficiently. And also be able to reduce a lot of the back and forth you have with those monitor and sponsor representatives, right? By being able to turn the tables around a little bit, right? And say, here's how we manage things, here's how you can get access. And I think just a couple of years ago, and when I started the company here, a long time ago, that was not the case. And I think sites were very hesitant. Sponsors and CROs were more combative about that as well. But today it's almost the expectation, and it's really flipped where most sponsors and CROs, most sites have probably run into the situation where it's maybe a requirement to even get on a study is to have tools that you need to have as a site to show that you're being higher quality and are going to be able to be a good partner for your sponsor and CRO and provide them access remotely into what they need to do in the most effective way possible. And so, ultimately, I think that mindset of taking control and having the tools and support and services you need and experience to help you do that, because it can be challenging to try to reinvent the wheel and figure that out on your own as you're a site and doing so many things. That's really what I'm most passionate about, and I still think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there for sites looking to really take that next step in terms of not just testing the waters and managing some things electronically or some things on certain studies, but really jump in and create the right tools and processes and templates for really how they manage things across their research portfolio. I think that's what I'm most excited about.
So, Brad, do you want to say something?
I was just going to ask, do you have like I don't know if there's like great metrics out there, but like, do you have an idea of like how many sites are now going e-reg versus paper? I know,
Yeah.
we've transitioned over time. It takes time. It can be painful at first, and you still maybe end up with a lot of legacy studies sort of sitting around in binders. But are you seeing a bigger uptake? You mentioned, and I agree with that, we're seeing a lot less pushback. Like sponsors are just kind of like, cool, whatever. You got e-reg, fine, we'll deal with it, or we're happy to work with it. But are sites now getting on board? Is it becoming more uptake?
Yeah, definitely. I think the best and most recent data I saw was at the last SCRS conference, where something like they looked at the utilization of different types of site technology, and eReg was one of the highest adopted. I think it was around like maybe 30% over the groups that they surveyed. And then there was like eSource and eConsent. So, it definitely is, I'd say the highest adopt. There's still a tremendous amount of opportunity out there for sites that have tried things, right? Or are, to your point, maybe taking some baby steps into that process. But there's still a tremendous amount of opportunity to, help sites, save our sites, right? Get to that next step. So it's I'd say the highest, one of the highest adopted of the technologies, but still
Still
tremendous.
fairly low, it sounds like. Yeah, I mean, that
Mhm.
makes sense and seems intuitive. I would see that being sort of the safest, I guess, for sites to really lean into. But
Mhm.
I'm surprised it's still that. I guess I shouldn't be surprised it's still kind of that low. I think it takes
It
it
takes
takes
a
time
lot
and
of
a
time.
certain amount of courage,
Yeah.
I guess, to be like, ah, shit, all right, rip the band-aid off. Let's start doing it. I know that
Hmm.
we took us longer than it probably should have to go into it. So no, that's good. That's good to know. And I mean,
Yeah.
you hope that that's a pathway that eSource and eConsent can follow over time, right? Like, okay, we saw the uh, you know, objections slowly fade away. We know that, I mean, eSource and eConsent aren't dramatically different. They shouldn't be. So maybe we can get those adopted a little bit quicker. So that's good to know.
I think it's super exciting. And, I feel like sites are taking control of their processes. There was a time when a lot of people were kind of asking, is this going to happen? Are sponsors going to allow this transition where sites really take hold of their technology and own their technology? I think now the answer is a resounding yes. We're really past that early adopter phase. And honestly, Rick, I thought it was a little higher than 30%. So I'm going to
Maybe I
come
was wrong.
I thought,
I could be
I
wrong.
thought I thought it was like 36%, moving
We're
closer
getting
to,
near the 40%
I
range.
thought it was closer to
Yeah.
40%, and it was actually East Source that was crossing into the low 30% range.
Okay.
And like what's going to be coming on next is e-consent. So what I'm hoping is that we see e-reg pass over 50%, and then we're going to really start to see the waterfall of this technology just becoming commonplace. And I actually think we're going to get to a point where if you're not using these technologies, you're falling behind. And that's kind of to Barry's
So
point, where, for sites that really want to be really considered players in the marketplace, those that are wanting to be eventually acquired, brought into private equity, scooped up into networks. If you're not utilizing these technologies, I think you're going to be considered a site that's just really not up with the times.
Yeah, I think the other big challenge there too is, we have to support our site staff and investigators too, right? So, in addition to what the sponsors and CROs, to your point, may require here, Rick, you may not be able to get the best, new coordinators and investigators on board, right? If you're needing to chase them down and, jump out at them here in between visits to get signatures and manage everything. They also want to be able to, have that flexibility, have the better time savings in their life, be able to access things remotely if they don't need to, be in the office that day, right? So I think that's the other big piece of it too, is we need to help, really support the great team that's out there working to do all the awesome things at the site. And these technologies can really help have a huge impact on the individuals that are, really, doing many times what can be the thankless, work out there, right?
You bring up a good point, Rick. I've actually heard CRCs looking for new jobs, and they were not willing to work at a site that was not using technology.
We've got interviews with PIs that say the same thing. Once they go the eReg eSource route, they really don't want to go back. So you've got a lot of generational transition as well as you go through to there. My prediction is, and this is, I have a site profile survey for every CRP and site partner that joins. And part of that site profile survey is capabilities, paper, eSource, eReg, whatever it might be. That about half of the sites say that they only go paper only. That's not eSource, eReg, anything. Half of the sites are still not jumping on to the E train yet. But I really wonder, and this is where, Rick, you touched on this with DTRA, but so the FDA's guidance for DCT trials in HCP offices and how we're going to do this, it bakes into there the fact that clinical trial protocols approved by the IRB will have visits that are, quote, DCT compatible.
Yes.
They're going to allow the permission to do DCT in a protocol. When you do that, when you hit that trigger where literally the sponsor makes the choice to do DCT through an IRB protocol, you're going to affect feasibility. You're going to have in your feasibility the capacity to run DCT trials. And in order to run DCT trials, you're going to have access to this kind of technology, or there's no way you're going to be able to perform it.
The draft guidance was released in July. The final guidance, I think, comes out in April, if I'm not mistaken. I had it up on a tab in Chrome last week until I had to restart. But yeah, it's DCT enabled trials will be coming in greater numbers very, very soon. Hey, I got a plug. RealTime is the most DCT enabled software on the market today. So it's in your hands, Brad.
And then playing off of Rick's point, one of the things that we did that during, and it's appealing now to some of our larger clients, but I think as some of the other sites grow, they can take advantage of it. But and maybe one of the reasons RealTime acquired Devana was we called it bringing the site operations team closer to the patient. And what we did is created a direct linkage between the BD, the feasibility, the contracting, the ClinOps, and the execution team. Doesn't matter where they're working physically, but they have what we call a link license, LYNK license, that is with the site-based person. So the site-based person has complete transparency and visibility and chat feed straight to the central team. So if your central team is in Atlanta, but you're running a trial out in rural Georgia, that rural Georgia site is directly connected into the central team.
I'm telling you, that's so powerful I call them the research deserts. I can't wait. Rick, if you ever see that final guidance, please let me know. I thought it was supposed to be released in December. Maybe they pushed it back a little bit. But that, Barry, what you just said there just gave me goosebumps, because that's exactly what we need to do to access these patient populations that they are literally denied access to research because of where they live.
You need a phone and a Wi-Fi or even a cellular connection, and you're able to have the person that's closest to the patient connected with the central office, and in the case of DCT, potentially connected to the PI that's overseeing the trial, right? They can't get to that underserved community. And to bring it full circle to, I think both Rick Arlo and Rick Greenfield were talking about this, and we were talking about the CRCs that or PIs, people that want to go to a tech-enabled site. That's what we're talking. A lot of those people are, as a lot of us in the industry are. Our mission is to get therapies to patients faster. Okay, and that's really what Devana, the real-time family, is all about, and what the sites want to do, right, is we're here to serve patients. Our mission is to get new advanced therapies to patients faster. How do you do that? One of the ways you do that is you automate, and that's how you're going to help speed the cycle time of getting the new therapy through clinical trials and get it to the people that need it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the D word, diversity, right? Being able to bring access to trials to those rural locations, and so having the ability to support virtual trials and extend the trials out to places you normally wouldn't be able to is another huge advantage of these virtual systems.
I mean, and you know, we just were awarded our first study in a new site. It's in rural Arkansas. Cool. We're centralized in Oklahoma City. It's a 76% African American community. There's no research. We couldn't do it without tools like this because I mean, we can't be everywhere all the time. So there's a coordinator. We've got a coordinator that's part of the system there. We can communicate. We can build source for them that is clean and simple and instructive. They can pick it up and without great trouble flow through the source right there. So, I mean, all these tools together, again, you really can't do without being tech enabled, for lack of a better word. And I think that's only going to get, more important.
And Brad, I think the biggest point there, and the one, I'm so glad you said that. So if anyone's watching here thinking that DCT is going to shut down my site, no, DCT is going to empower your site to reach more patients. Brad is still a site. He's succeeding. And because he is embracing DCT, his business and his outreach to his community is higher. That is the power of DCT. You're not getting replaced. And so if anything, Brad's going to be the survivor when DCT hits. The businesses that have a DCT SOP on the books, ready to accept these DCT compatible trials, will be the ones that survive. The ones that are dinosaurs and do not embrace DCT or embrace the ability to reach out to as many patients as possible for diversity, those are going to be the ones who aren't necessarily going to survive.
Well, and Dr. Fox, they also need to have the technology.
That's my next segue, Rick. And therefore, since RealTime is the optimal DCT CTMS platform right now, and RealTime is connecting itself to the future of this research by empowering sites to do DCT, it might be a really good idea to have a conversation with them if DCT is something that you're looking for.
Well, look, this solves a problem that I think is sort of inherent. Your site without technology, it's not scalable. You can't scale because you need a whole team everywhere that you want to have a site. Now, I don't think clinical trials are ever going to be fully scalable because you still need people, still relationships. But this enables you as a small site to achieve some scale. If you have tight centralized processes, again, you can build the source, you can build it and basically implement it and integrate it. So I think, again, this is huge, like business use case, like for even small sites. I think it's extremely exciting, what we're able to do now.
Well, and I want to stress that. We support the smallest of small sites. RealTime CTMS can stand alone as a tiny little CTMS for tiny little sites, but it can also grow into a very large system, enterprise level, that can support the largest of site networks. So, don't let what we're talking about scare you away either. If you're just getting started, it's never too soon to start embracing technology and start growing and scaling your site at whatever size you're at.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is a good point. I've had people talk to me about, like, I'm a small site, I run off spreadsheets. I'm like, hey, dude, you got to stop. And they're like, well, CTMS, it's too much. It's all this stuff.
No,
And I'm like,
it's like
yeah,
a
but
few $100 a month.
I was
for
going
a
to say,
basic system. Like,
you don't have to have it all. I'm like, if you go,
Hmm.
you know, real time, if you just need to track your patients, and at the very least, you need to know what money you should be getting paid for the patients that you're seeing.
Yep.
And that's a core sort of offering, so to speak. And that's a good point. I think you don't have to, you know, take over the world all at once. And even to Nelson's comment, Nelson comments all the time. I just want to make sure I address him. I don't know that the day of DCT judgment is necessarily ever. If you're a small site and you serve your community and you're successful doing that, you may never need to go, you know, hardcore. Everything is beamed out all over the place. Now, that doesn't mean you still don't need some of the same technology solutions to run your site. I'm willing to bet, Nelson, that you use the CTMS. Now, do you need to, you know, be able to implement eSource across 50 sites? No, you don't. But you probably still want to use it at your site. So I say the answer is probably never.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got integrated sites, you have things like that. And we all know this. Let's say feasibilities. I think feasibilities are going to be the one thing that are going to trigger sites to adopt technology when feasibilities are going to require site selection to have technology. So we've only got 10 minutes. It's been so much fun. I did have one. This is my stupid Dr. Fox question I wanted to ask. And this is just something out of curiosity. Brad, maybe you can help me with this, but how does real-time help with the long-term doc storage requirements of a site? Can you walk me through that?
I'm going to leave it up, to the RICs. One of the RICs.
how does it help? It just makes it so you don't really have to do it. Like, it just does it. It's included in the price. You don't have to go through we used to call them storage parties, where you'd have to go through an SOP and get all your documents. I don't even remember everything that our team had to do, but, get the documents ready to go off to archiving. But they had to go through a full QC process and get put into an archival binder. Then we'd get them shipped off. And then, of course, if we ever got audited, we'd have to recall them back. There were monthly fees. Now you just change the study to closed, and it's living in your system eternally. If you ever have an auditor come in, you just give them access to the study, and they can audit it anytime they want. So,
wow, Rick, no wonder your beard is gray. I mean, I didn't realize you were at your site in 1920 when you had to do all that stuff.
Oh, well, we used to have a storage room. I mean, boxes to the ceiling, man. And I'd have to
hearing about this process. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
So when you close a study, is there something in real time that says the promised storage time? Like, we promised to hold on to it for 15 years. You can put an expiration date on it.
It's in the contract. I mean, we hold on to your records indefinitely.
Okay.
There's no time limit on as far as how long we will hold on to your records. It's indefinite. Now, if you decide to leave us, then we will export your documents into a file so you can take them with you.
So no, I meant, so in the contract between site and sponsor, there's a time. We only have to hold on to this for so long.
Usually like 15 years, right?
It's well, I mean, there's some sponsors that say lifetime. I've only agreed to that once. But do you have the capacity? I mean, I'm sure it would help real time. It would help the site if, you don't have to hold on to it indefinitely. At some point, you can get rid of it. Yep. Do you have the ability to just say, this expires this time, in which case, do you have the ability to say, have you contacted the sponsor? Because sometimes it says, you have to contact the sponsor before you destroy. So, I mean, are the logistics of long-term document storage baked into real time?
They are. I mean, if a site requests for us to destroy their documents, we can destroy and provide evidence of destruction. So that's possible. I mean, this technology hasn't been around long enough for us to even have reached a lot of those 15-year
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So I'm sure the day will come where we'll get a lot more requests. But, at this time, we're just holding on to a lot of documents electronically.
Yeah, it is a really good question because, ultimately at least on the FDA side, and different health authorities have different requirements. But on the FDA side, it's actually 2 years after the last time the data is going to be used for a marketing indication. So you really have no idea as a site
Mhm.
when that will be. And so that's why setting that up in your contract with the sponsor is critical. Anywhere, Rick's point 15 years or 10. We've seen, some sites that will also just say 7. And then at that point, requires the sponsor to reach back out to you. But
Mhm.
ultimately setting up that with every different sponsor. And one of the other key things we're seeing a lot too is that a lot of the sponsors and CROs are asking the sites about these types of questions, right, with the technology. So having your own SOPs that define record destruction and retention requirements is key. Obviously, here with RealTime and Complion, we can then be good stewards and partners with you to build that in and track those things in the software. But those are definitely some key things to proactively look at and make sure that you're in a good position for things like vendor qualification, right? What sponsors and CROs are really asking sites about more and more in general, and specifically around technology use too, right? So I think those are some of the other benefits too of working with a vendor should be able to help you with too, right? Help share some of that guidance and best practices.
So, Chris, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I have to get off at 11. I have another call, but I've been wanting to ask a question, give you guys a sales opportunity. So I'm part owner of a site, and the staff are all very experienced. So they're veterans. They've been around for 15 plus years, all of them, and they all refuse eSource. So what is the number one way or best way to convince them? Because I'm a proponent of eSource. I think it makes my life easier. But they're convinced of the opposite, right? They don't think they want to go through the learning curve. They're happy using paper.
Yep, and
What
they threaten to quit if you adopt it.
Fire
exactly?
them.
Yep.
Fire them all.
Yep.
Can't. One of them's a partner.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
they can be a partner, but they don't have to be an employee.
True, but then you have costs. So, what would be your primary selling point?
Oh my gosh. I mean,
I
driving compliance is a huge one.
Well, in terms from their perspective, right? How does it make their job easier? Is really what I'm asking.
That's
I'm
really
selling
hard,
to them.
Chris.
I'm selling to
I'll
them,
tell
right?
you, that's really, really hard. A lot of sites are running through that.
Yeah,
There's
that's why I'm
one.
giving real time a
Yeah.
shot at making this sale.
What do you think? I've had my experiences, but I want to know if you've seen this real time, if you have run into what I call the research dinosaurs who don't want to adopt
Well, look,
technology.
I mean, I think the transition, and I say this all the time, switching from paper to electronic, there is that learning curve. There is a challenge. But I visit sites all the time. I'm thinking of one in Dallas, a huge network of GI sites that they don't even have any paper in any of their exam rooms. It's either tablets or laptops. They absolutely love eSource. That's all they use all day long. But that's all they know. That's all they used to use paper, but once they made the transition, they're incredibly efficient with it. They can load up their forms very, very quickly, and they know how to use the product. But you just have to be willing to get over that hump and make that transition. But you can be incredibly efficient in eSource. Of course, you have to use a really good eSource product that is efficient. You have to have something that allows you to tab through your pages quickly and allows you to collect your data efficiently. But being able to drive the processes and having skip logic and having something that really does make sure that you're staying compliant, having something that your monitors love. I mean, there's really not a reason not to do it, quite honestly, except for the pain of transitioning.
I would say I'll throw in a couple of things. One is that with eSource, you can actually build in instructions in your eSource. So you can have links out when you're like, if you're in a visit, oh, this needs to happen. Here's a link to the portal. So it's a lot more self-contained than having paper and then having to go over to a computer and do this. So I love that. You can actually make it work. You can build workflow into your eSource, which I think is pretty cool. Not carrying binders, which somebody mentioned, is awesome. But here's another one. You know what? You can spend a half day at home entering data because it's on eSource, and you don't have to take a binder home. Maybe that's an easy selling point, is that you can
Maybe
enter that data
more
from anywhere.
flexibility.
Yeah. So
True.
you know what? You got nothing to do. You want to go home, take a half day. It's Friday. Just, spend a couple hours doing data entry. I don't want you taking binders home. So that would never happen. So with eSource, you can do that.
Doctors can sign and review stuff, on the can. They don't have to be, looking
And
at
if the day ever comes where eSource goes straight into EDC,
Oh man.
then there won't be a choice. And so, I mean,
Sure, it's game over then.
Will that day come? I think it will. Is it tomorrow? Probably not.
No.
But I guess what I would say, Chris, to the employees is the day is going to come. And so for all the reasons that everybody said aforementioned, it'd be like, okay, these are the reasons today, but then you're ready if it ever switches. So.
And Chris, you've got to go. You've got a call.
Yeah,
Thank you, Chris.
I started
Good
the meeting.
question.
I can hang out. I started the meeting. They're not on yet. So
Okay. Well, I mean, we're at an hour, and I want to respect all of our listeners. We've got amazing comments. I'm not going to be able to do them all. I've met so many doctors who can't sign electronically. Yeah, I agree. There's definitely a learning curve on the doctor end. The average PI age is over 70. It's just something to consider. So we have to get our younger PIs. That's another point. If we start to adopt electronically, we might actually attract younger PIs, more tech savvy PIs.
They got to
that
go
may
in.
solve
They got
one of
to
the other
sign
problems.
off. They got to sign off in EDC at some point.
Mhm.
So I've been there. I've stood over a doctor many times on their computer. I'm like, click here. Okay, click here. Put your username here. Hey man, it happens, but once they get it, we find it often does work great. But I feel that pain for sure.
I think the other thing to think about, going back to what we were just talking about on the archive side, just think about every new document physically you're creating. You're going to have to track that now for the next 15 years. And the crazy thing is, the average marriage, just to put it in perspective, the average marriage in the US lasts about 7.5 or 8 years. So to put it in another way, right? Every time you're creating a new physical document or binder, it's like on average, you're gonna have to hold on to that for over 2 marriages.
Yeah.
Not that I, promote, I don't know anything here in terms of or anything like that. But it's just another way to look at it, right? Especially if you're saying some of those individuals that are 70, they, on average from a PI perspective, they may not be at the site moving forward, but that's an ongoing responsibility that you're creating for yourself and liability as well. If that information,
Paper management is a huge burden.
right?
Yeah, and Scott, I mean, I'm kind of in the same field as a lot of times the PIs that run into this. It's you have to use this system, and then a month later they're happy. Sorry, Brad. Sorry. So Scott says at the end, it should not be optional, and I agree. As a business owner, it's a tough risk if people don't want to adapt to the systems. I think I'm going to move Rick around here in a minute. If people don't want to adapt to the systems, then it's something that you need to consider as a business. How do you want your business quality to be? Do you want it to be higher? And in that event, you probably need to make some tough decisions on your staffing, your personnel, and your quality metrics. We are over the hour, so I do want to wrap this up. I want to give everyone one final summary, one final nail to hit. So let's start over here with Barry. Barry, a short summary. What are you doing right now to save our sites?
Hey, we're trying to do. We use automation to cut the cycle time of clinical trials and get therapeutic advances to patients faster.
Mm-hmm. And trust me, that's going to help a lot. Rick Arlo, what are you doing to save our sites?
I'd love to talk with everyone here who's interested personally, one-on-one, to understand what some of your challenges may be from a regulatory and document perspective, and really explore from our experiences with other similar sites if we can help. We'd love to have that opportunity.
And Rick, my friend, what are you doing to save our sites?
Hey, once again, thank you guys. Number one thing is just continue to listen and continue to innovate and be a part of working just collectively in this community to get better and try to move the needle, guys. So we're right here with you, and we'll keep working hard to make it better.
All right. Now, I know Rick Greenfield is not coming to Save Our Sites. He has a conflict. Rick Arlo, Barry, are you guys coming? You coming to the Save Our Sites conference?
It is in 2 weeks, right?
Correct.
2
20
weeks.
days.
I would like to get the details and attend, so I'm going to get them from Rick.
Let's see what we can do to get you that. We can get you hooked up. Rick Arlo, you want to come to Tucson?
I would love to come. Unfortunately, I'm not set to come out this year, but we will have a number of folks here from our team and broader real-time family here.
We have a great team coming.
I'm looking forward to it. Barry, if you're coming, and this is something I'm trying to do on every video, if someone were to meet you at Save Our Sites, could you tell them something about yourself that has nothing to do with research?
I could do that, yeah. Do you want me to do that now?
Yeah. Yeah, let's do. What's an icebreaker? A little FYI about Barry.
I was born in Canada, and my hometown. I share the same hometown as the first left-handed Masters golf champion, Mike Weir, 2003.
Wow, I did not leave disappointed. Holy cow, Barry. That's a very good icebreaker. All right, we're going to wrap this up. There's one more thing I wanted to say. For all of the attendees at Save Our Sites, you're going to get a swag bag, a black swag bag. It's going to have RealTime's logo on it. I want you to know that black swag bag was made by a company who hires special needs adults who really just want to contribute to their community. And I really thank RealTime for giving those special needs adults an opportunity to focus on something to contribute to their world. They are so stoked that they were able to do this. Nobody knew who RealTime was. And I can tell you that made some huge impacts. And so truly thank you on behalf of the special needs community. What you did for those folks, for their caretakers, meant the world.
That is awesome.
Save Our Sites, Tucson, Arizona, 20 days. Look out for Barry. Barry, we'll get you there. If you can make it there, we'll get you a ticket. And importantly, watch this video and find the RealTime folks and ask them the questions. They've got so much to offer. I highly recommend you catch the RealTime team at Save Our Sites. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.